Hey people, how's it going? I've been seeing a lot of people coming on the server lately and also coming on Reddit and complaining about pillars a lot lately. Unusually high volume of it, actually, which is surprising because as far as I know, there wasn't considerably more new players recently. So I think it's this trend where some noobs will see other noobs complaining and they'll assume it's some sign of a systematic problem and they'll all just start complaining, and then before you know it, a whole bunch of idiots are just complaining about pillars. So I got a bunch of tips here. I got a bunch of information about how pillars work, how to work on a server that's got a lot of pillars, what you can do, how you can find a place, how you can protect yourself, all of that stuff. But first of all, it needs to be said that this is a PvE game. The only way to protect certain resources is with pillaring. So there's lots of really good reasons for pillaring. Oh wow, check this out. This is one of the topics I was actually going to cover, rafts. I don't know who this guy is, but he's got it figured out. One of the things you can do as a noob is build a raft. If you start out here on the beach, I'm over here on Ragnarok. This is the most active server on PvE for PS4 on the official cluster. So pretty much the pillar problem is going to be the worst here of anywhere else on PS4. So if people can manage here, you can manage here too. You don't complain the first thing you do when you get on the server and you're on the beach and you see pillars everywhere. Just you know, learn these tips. What did he just say? Anyway, we're not dealing with that guy right now. But anyway, yeah, you can see here's pillars. Oh, look who owns them. It's me. I've had these pillars here for over 2.5 years. And I'm not going to remove them because some brand new noob jumps on the server and says, there's pillars everywhere. Yes, of course there's pillars everywhere. It's a 2.5-year-old cluster. This guy, he put this here 2.5 years ago also, like seconds after I put mine there. And even though he doesn't play here, for some reason he still updates them. But that's not the point. There's going to be pillars. There's many reasons why there will be pillars. I mean, I can tell you about some of the reasons, but I'll do that later. This is actually a pretty sweet raft. This guy's got a lot of space in here. He's got his animals in here. This guy, he knows what he's doing. This is a perfect example of what you can do without pillar space. I mean, look at this. This is pretty great. He's got his animals in here. He's got a whole lot of crafting stuff in here. He's doing great. Uh-oh, he's trying to catch me. Better get out just in case. So anywho, that's a perfect example. So you start off on the beach, you see all these pillars. You want to find a good spot to eventually build a big base, but you're not going to find it on the beach. Because I mean, I know this server pretty well, and probably 90+% of the beachfront is pillared or built on. So you're not going to be able to build there. So where can you build when you're starting off and you don't have a flyer? What you can do is build these rafts. They're really great. You put down the basic raft platform and then you can build onto it. And there's a lot of great videos all over the internet for how to build a great raft base. This one's pretty cool. I've seen a whole bunch from this guy named X1Wing X. He's got a lot of rafts. A lot of people find those right off because if you just search for ARC rafts, like his come up near the top of the list. But I think his are actually pretty outdated, and they're more intended for PvP rather than PvE. You can get away with you know, more reckless use of space on PvE, and I would recommend it. So I would do something big, you know, go big. Like here's one of my rafts that I designed for squidding. It's actually on a motorboat platform, but I have another video. It's like the last one before this one. I'm not going to put all the footage from it in here, but it's very similar to this. Very spacious raft. You can build on a regular raft platform. Cram all your crafting, you know, crafting stations and everything like that into it, and you can even put electricity and everything on it, and manage. Yeah, so you get all these things on your raft. You can move it all around. You can travel the oceans. You can you know, have a totally viable base. And yeah, so don't complain about pillars is what I'm getting at here. There's options available, good options. because this can be moved to where the resource nodes are. You can easily gather, you can easily process your materials without having to lug them around, because you just put them right on the raft base. Anyway, so that's the first thing you can do to get established, get some resources together, get a couple of mounts, get a flyer. You're going to want a flyer if you're going to want to find a base on a server that's 2.5 years old, which they all are at this point on official, so, you know, deal with it. That's how the game works. It's a survival game. It's a harsh game. There's scarcity concerns. You know, you're not going to just have easy, comfortable living just delivered to you on your doorstep the second you spawn in at the blue ob. That's not how it works. That's not what this game is about. And yet I see people complain as if that's what they think this is going to be a dozen times a day lately. I don't know what the deal is. It's a weird trend. It's worse than normal. It's very irritating. I've expressed some of these same ideas on Reddit, and I've been downvoted for it recently, which is it's not rational. It's not reasonable to expect a harsh survival game to just deliver you, you know, a free ride 2.5 years in. It's not how it works. Anyway, so here I am flying around. I'm looking for some places to build, and I'll tell you, this is the most populated PvP server. I mean PvE server. Look, right now it's relatively early in the day. There's already 17 people, which is actually very low. The other day there was over 50 people on for no particular reason. There's no particular events going on. There was I don't even think there was a multiplier. I think there was a multiplier, but no specific events were going on. Over 50 people. Very laggy, but it's a good community and it's social and people help each other out and people are friendly. So I like it here anyway. But the pillar problem is going to be worse here than anywhere, and it's still totally viable to find space. Like, there's a pillar I just saw. I should have maybe timed this a little better for day, but you can still see there's pillars all through here, but this is right near Blue Ob. So, of course, we're not going to find a lot of space here. Viking Bay, which is right in front of me, is one of the most popular areas that people like to go for some reason. Holy crap, it's taking a long time to load. There. So Viking Bay is that little body of water right in front of my arrow. The Blue Ob was right back there. This area is a very, well traversed area. People, they get in the server, almost everybody spawns jungle too. That's a great spot to spawn. And then they make their way into this region here and they start looking for spots. So if you are coming here 2.5 years late, you're not going to find a spot there most likely. You still might. But look how much of the map this area takes up. It's a tiny fraction. A very tiny fraction. There's a whole rest of the map. And some of the areas were added late in the game, like the desert area in the bottom right corner. That was added much later than the rest of the map. And so it's still wide open. And there's nothing particularly significant out there as far as features go that people might want to be next to. So it's pretty much just wide open space. Tons of it. This region right here is generally built by somebody because it's pretty eye-catching. You can see this frozen area. People are going to see it, and they're going to come here and want to build here. There's really not a whole lot built here on this server at the moment. There used to be more. You know, people come and go over time. I'm not actually seeing many pillars. Those are trees. So this area here might actually be open at the moment. Which is surprising because this area would normally not be open. But there you go. That's an example of there's more space than you'd think. Even me, knowing this server pretty well, that was more space than I thought there'd be. This area right here is for oil, so a lot of people pillar on it. But the whole rest of this big snowy slope is pretty much going to be wide open. Yeah, look, I'm seeing 0 pillars, 0 pillars, 0 pillars. I'm just flying around. There's actually a great resource area underneath that everybody used early on, especially for crystal and oil. So there would be more reason for this sort of region to be a little more protected and traversed, but it's not. So there you go. There's even more space. And I mean, I fly around this map frequently. There's space all up in these hills and cliffs. It's everywhere. There's also some big bases dotted throughout. Like here's a big base coming up. There's a big base over there somewhere. You can usually tell where the big bases are because there'll be a gap in the trees. So if you're flying around and you don't want to waste your time, you see the gap of trees over there. You see a gap of trees over there. That's probably where the bases will be. Let's have a look. That one's a smaller gap, but it's a nice cliff edge, so somebody could have built there, or it might be just a natural bald spot. And I'm getting close enough to load, and nothing's loading in. So this actually is not a base. There are I see pillars though. Someone pillared the edge, and here's a base. So that one, the bigger bald spot that I saw, is a big base. But yeah, that's how you can look around. If you see a bunch of bald spots of trees, don't bother, because you generally want to avoid loading them if you can, because they take a long time. Trying to get out of load range so it goes back to normal. Yeah, another thing that noobs will often complain about is lag. They'll say, I fly around and it's super laggy. Generally, the reason why you get those frame rate drops is because you're loading in a big base. So if you learn where the big bases are, and you don't want to get those frame rate drops, just don't fly next to them. Like, fly over them, fly around them. Try not to load them. And if you do load them, just be aware where they are, so you know why it's loading slowly. It's not really lag. It's a local frame rate drop. Let me just get some stam. So this is the canyons area. There's a lot of griffins in this region, so there'll be areas where people protect and put traps. Yeah. So let me talk a little bit about why people pillar in the first place. Pillars obviously stop other players from building, and the reason why people tend to use pillars is you can stop other people from building, but it won't block spawns. So let's say there's a griffin spawn here. I don't think there is, but let's say there was. Putting pillars here would make sure that the griffins could still spawn, but players couldn't build, because if another player does come and build, obviously the griffins won't spawn. This is actually a griffin spawn right here, and you'll see some pillars most likely. Yes, there's one by me. Oh, it's been damaged. But anyway, yeah, I protect this spot because it's a griffin spawn, and griffins are one of the rare spawns over here. They're one of the unique spawns on RAG. So yeah, there's another way that you could block player spawns relatively inexpensively, and that's by putting down foundations. But the problem with foundations is they'll block resource spawns and not tame spawns, wild dino spawns. So generally you'll see pillars because they're cheaper and they don't disable the spawns. So yeah, here's a swamp. This area has been pillared for most of the last 2.5 years. And on this server especially, we use it for meat runs. Everybody on the whole server, pretty much with teleporter access, can teleport here and do meat runs, and often even at the same time. I mean, we've had times where there'd be like, 6 to 10 people in this swamp doing meat runs at the same time, and the wildlife here is so abundant and easy to see and easy to get to that it works. Like, if 5, 6, 10 people can actually do a meat run in here at the same time without really, hurting each other too bad on their collection rates, because there's a lot of big meaty guys here, like those paracers and those phiomias. They're two of the meatiest ones, and gators, and they're very abundant. Anyway, so yeah, that's a perfectly valid reason why somebody would pillar a region to protect it for community use. Everybody benefits, everybody wins. So yeah, there are valid reasons. It's very annoying as a longtime player, like a veteran player, to hear people complain about pillars all the time. It's like the surest way of indicating to the whole rest of the server what a noob you are. You come on the server, you start complaining about pillars. It's like going on the street for the first time and complaining about stop signs. Yeah, there's stop signs on the damn road. They're needed for helping coordinate people so they don't crash into each other and have all this, contention. It's practical, it's valuable, it's useful, and it's common. It's going to exist. I mean, get over it. Actually, these pillars are new. This area has been wide open for ages. But this was a perfect example of a place that people generally wouldn't pay any attention to. I'm surprised someone actually pillared it. This has been unpillared for years. But yeah, since it's all sloped, generally people would not build here. I'm surprised this guy built here. I don't even know who that guy is. But if you're a random noob and you're looking for a spot, this is generally an awesome spot. Here's a spot that looks like it's wide open. But yeah, you'd have to build a different kind of way where you could support your structure. I might make a video on how to do that. I've got a really awesome build technique which lets you build on any uneven ground. You can sort of see how to do it on my previous video where I was giving away a base. It was built on top of a mountain peak. But yeah, all these peaks, you know, places that people generally don't think are convenient to build on, they're almost always wide open. And that's a lot of the map. That's a large percentage of the map. This whole area here, it looks all scruffy and ugly, but you know, you chop those trees down, you clear those bushes out, and it's a nice little spot. A guy used to live here, but he moved. And so he's not there anymore. It's wide open. All this area is wide open. You'd be surprised how much prime looking real estate is wide open. I love a good view. I like to be on a perch where I can see a good view. And a whole lot of this is open. No, that's got a pillar. This side of the canyon has some pillars, but that side on the other side, a lot of wide open space across that whole area. And that's not uncharacteristic of this whole world, to be able to find tons of space everywhere, just fly around. During the Christmas break, I got on another server, a very populated server, and I just flew around, and I found a cool spot up on a mountain that I really liked and built there. But there was tons of space. I mean, massive swaths of wide open space. Some of them had some resources though. Like sometimes you'll find some resources that you'll be blocking. But if it's the regular metal nodes that aren't rich, you know, I don't think anyone's going to be all that bent out of shape about blocking a regular metal node anymore, because they don't have a very high yield anyway, and a lot of people just mine on aberration. And so if you see a good spot, it's got regular metal nodes, you know, don't worry about it, just block them. They're not a big deal. There's tons of them everywhere, and they're not as high yield as the rich ones. If people really want to get serious about mining, they'll go for the rich ones anyway. They won't be looking for the regular ones. So help yourself. This area right here is almost always completely wide open, but it's got a pretty big inconvenience, so I wouldn't recommend building up here in this snowy area, because normally it would freeze your ass off. Like right now, murder snow. That's a bad sign. Yeah, so right now I'm actually dying from frost. So don't build up here unless you're willing to wear like full high quality fur all the time. It's not worth it. But yeah, this area, this whole region in front of me here was added late. It's mostly flat. There's a lot of areas that aren't significant. They're just big flat dunes. So they're wide open. Nobody's claimed them. Nobody cares about them because they're not interesting. But it's plenty of space, plenty of flat, relatively flat space to build whatever you want. Here's a cool space I wanted to build on another map before. And it was taken in the past, but here it is, wide open. Not blocking any spawns. It's got a cool view. Really, it's another great spot. You can fly around this map all day long and find mostly wide open space. I'd imagine 80% of the land is still wide open on this map. And this is the worst of the maps as far as this kind of stuff goes. Well, as far as RAG goes. RAG is one of the most popular maps. But Island, I think, is smaller. So sometimes you'll actually see Island maps that have less space just because they're geographically smaller. But there's so many maps, and a lot of them are a lot less populated. Like I'm on this one Asia-based one that's so unpopulated that it's kind of boring over there. It's just very quiet, but it's wide open. It's like 95% wide open. It's crazy. And a lot of the people who build over there, they don't pillar very much at all. Like I would recommend pillaring around your base. If you're in an area where people could easily build next to you, for some reason people seem to just build right next to people. I mean, there's plenty of space, but they'll still build right next to somebody else, and you'll constantly be busy loading each other's bases. Remember that lag, that low frame rate delay I was talking about, the load lag. It's inconvenient. It's very annoying. And if you build right next to a person where you're constantly loading their base in, they're also constantly loading your base in, you'll both be inconvenienced all the time. Super annoying. This base is relatively small and quick loading, so it's not a big issue, but I mean, I still wouldn't build right next to the guy. But yeah, I would recommend building pillars around your base to make sure that people don't build within load distance. So you might want to build them out to about here. because I didn't do that once. I built out pretty far, but I didn't build far enough. And then some guy built this mega base that was like 20 times bigger than my reasonably sized base. And it just killed the load. This is exactly why people pillar. There's valid reasons, many valid reasons. If I had just pillared a little further out, that guy would have had to build out of my load range, and I wouldn't have been so inconvenienced that I quit the damn server because of it, which I ended up having to do because it was just unbearable. That was another server, 844. And it just wasn't worth the trouble. I mean, I was wasting minutes of every 10 minutes basically loading this guy's base. Oh, so awful. What a jerk. Anyway, yeah, so there's valid reasons to pillar, and the irony is that I've actually had people who've joined the server in the past bitched about my pillars, complained when I tried to, keep them from building right next to my load range, and then they got established eventually. They found more space. They got established. They learned the game, and then he was one of the most notorious pillarers on the server. He actually even named his tribe after pillars. He called it Pillar Squad or something like that. And he pillared all sorts of places. I think excessively. But the point is that this guy who was very vocal against pillaring the day he started, later realized how important and useful they were, that he was excessively using them. But yeah, there's valid reasons, okay? I think I've abundantly made that point. Let's see, what else can I tell you about tips? So I've covered the rafts, very valuable. I would check out some of my other videos on rafts. I got one called the Seasteader. It's great. It's a really old design, but it's still perfectly awesome. I've actually used it recently. I used it on an aberration server because I was over there taming otters. I made the Seasteader, even though it was kind of excessive because it was in a tiny lake. But it was great. You can actually also cram cryo fridges in there. You can put a generator in there. I didn't have one in the original design, but it's obvious enough to just put one in there. You gotta cut out a couple of things. You can cut out a preserving bin, but you'll figure that out. It's not complicated. And I also have the squidding raft that has a video, and I also have a newer version of that works on a regular raft base instead of a motorboat. That's in the previous video. It's talking about early and mid-tier bases. Check that one out if you want to know how to make a good raft base. But yeah, then just get a flyer, get a good flyer. Get a pteranodon is fine. Fly around. If you're on a pteranodon though, you might not want to fly around the redwoods recklessly because there's Thylas out here. I'm gonna get some stamp. Yeah, fly around. You'll find plenty of space. There's pillars right here, but I mean, there's so much space on this map. I would imagine over 80% of the land is totally wide open. And oh yeah, there's one more thing I haven't covered that's totally viable. People tend to overlook it, but it's totally viable. Is building in the water, building near the shore in the shallow water. Let me fly out and we'll have a look at the situation right next to the red ob, because I bet you this has been overlooked. I could be wrong. It might not have been overlooked, but it very easily could have been overlooked. See, there's a nice shallow little hump right there. Let's see if there's anything on it. There's pillars nearby. I see pillars on the shore right there. But let's get a little closer to right about here and have a look. Look at that. I'm not seeing any pillars. I've seen a shark. No pillars. So I could potentially just build right here, and there's a method you can use where you kind of branch out the base, you connect it. Most people use ceilings and pillars. You kind of branch out a base that kind of like covers ground along the seabed there, and then you just have one pillar go up, and then as wide as your base is, you can also make the rest of your base. So I could easily build a big ass base right here on this rock, right off the shore, right next to Red Ob. This is a rather prime location, and you could do this everywhere, the whole damn coastline. I mean, you could do this. Well, there's going to be people living on the beach though too, because generally the beach is going to be populated. So if you do that, people will probably be kind of irritated if you're super close within load range. But it's totally viable. I mean, it's totally possible. And on this map especially, there's shallow spots all over the place, like out in the ocean. If you get a swimmer, swim around, you'll see a bunch of like big rock formations. You'll see like really high rolling dunes under the water, like high rolling hills under the water. Or you'll see like just these big rocky outcroppings that almost reach the surface. There's a whole bunch of them. There's a whole bunch of them. Let me open my map. Over near where my fingertip is, basically at 1040, there's a whole bunch of really shallow, giant, like rock structures that almost reach the surface. They're like 20 feet under, or 30, I guess. So you could totally build a base right on top of them. You could enclose the top. You could totally have a water pin under your base. It's totally viable. I built a really cool base in the middle of the ocean on single player. I don't want to show you where it is though, because I might actually want to build it on a live server one day, and I don't want someone else to steal it. But you look around the ocean, you'll find all sorts of spots that are great for building a base on the water. And plus, apparently they're going to add a feature in Genesis soon where you could just plop a structure to base your base off of right on the surface of the water without actually foundationing it to the ground in any way. So that'll make it even easier to build on the water. But the problem already doesn't exist. It's not a real problem. It seems like a problem if you're, you know, a minute one noob that just spawned on the beach and saw pillars within the first 5 seconds and just threw your hands up in the air and said, "Oh my God, it's impossible." No, it's not. It's not impossible. Get your ass off the beach, do some work. It's a survival game. Put some effort into it, and you'll be totally fine. Yeah, that's pretty much the points I wanted to make. Hopefully that some of this was actually helpful. Hopefully some of this will give you some perspective so you don't embarrass yourself. And have a good one. See you online.